It was supposed to be just another quiet drive through the rural backroads of Georgia until a towering elephant stepped into the middle of the road, blocking her path. The animal's massive frame was caked in mud, and something in its eyes stopped her breath. Sorrow. Ellen gripped the steering wheel, stunned, heart pounding, unsure if she was hallucinating. She rolled down the window, and the elephant didn't move, just stared. Ellen Monroe, 67, had spent the last year in silence after her husband passed. Mornings were long, empty, filled with toast she couldn't taste and memories she couldn't bear to open. Her world had collapsed into a routine of numbness. Feed the chickens, water the porch plants, sit alone. She hadn't spoken a full sentence to another soul in weeks. That morning, she had left the house just to feel the wind through the trees. Driving calmed her, gave her the illusion of moving forward. The old radio played soft gospel music as she passed cornfields and broken fences. Nothing in her routine suggested her life was about to collide with something enormous, literally. The elephant's skin was torn in places, flies swarming around open wounds, chains dragged from its ankles, clinking softly as it shifted its weight. Its ribs showed beneath thick, wrinkled skin, and one ear was half gone. It didn't trumpet. It just looked at her like it had been waiting. Ellen slowly stepped out of the car, her boots crunching the gravel. She had seen elephants in books, in documentaries, but never here, never like this. She raised one hand, half in greeting, half in disbelief. The animal didn't back away. Instead, it took one shaky step forward, and Ellen saw its knees buckle slightly. She looked around, no circus, no truck, no trailer, just pine trees and silence. Her breath caught when she noticed blood where the chains met its legs. "Who did this to you?" she whispered, though the wind was the only answer. Somewhere between terror and awe, she felt a pull deep in her chest. Something like purpose. The elephant let out a low, guttural rumble. Not loud, but deep enough to vibrate her ribs. It was a sound of pain, but also something else: recognition. Ellen's legs moved before her brain did. She approached, and still raised, as if trying to touch. Her whole life, she had felt invisible. Now something was seeing her. Behind the animal, deep in the trees, a rustle, quick, sharp, intentional. Ellen turned, heart racing, but saw nothing. When she turned back, the elephant had lowered its head slightly, as if urging her to act. The silence around them was too perfect. Something wasn't right. She reached into the car and grabbed the emergency blanket she kept behind the seat. It was a ridiculous gesture. What comfort could nylon give this creature? But it was all she had. As she stepped back out, she heard it. A scream. Not from the elephant. From the woods. And just like that, everything in her told her to run, but she didn't. She stayed. Ellen froze, her eyes scanning the tree line. The scream had been sharp, human, but there was no one in sight. The elephant shifted again, its trunk swaying toward her, almost protectively. The chains rattled, a brutal reminder that this wasn't just a lost animal, it had escaped something terrible. And now, whatever it had escaped from might be close. She stepped closer to its side, noticing deep scars hidden under layers of dirt. Some wounds were fresh, raw, and oozing. Others were old, healed badly. Her hands trembled as she reached out, barely brushing its shoulder. Its skin was like cracked leather, warm, alive, suffering. She whispered, "You poor thing. What have they to you?" In the distance, a motor roared, then cut. Someone had followed the elephant, and Ellen felt the weight of that reality press against her chest. If whoever did this found them, what would happen next? She glanced down at the chains, at the bleeding ankles, and her mind raced. Was she prepared to get involved? She didn't know, but she couldn't look away. A truck door slammed, then footsteps fast, deliberate, getting closer. Ellen's breath. The elephant turned its head toward the sound and let out a low, trembling groan. Ellen moved instinctively, stepping between the sound and the animal, her arms half outstretched. "Go," she whispered, not sure to whom, herself or the elephant. A man's voice rang out, harsh and commanding. "That's mine! Step away from it!" Ellen turned to see a large man in stained coveralls, his face red with anger. He held a cattle prod in one hand and something worse in the other, a leash and bolt cutters. Her instincts screamed danger. Ellen didn't move. "You did this?" she asked, voice shaking. The man sneered. Bought it fair, got papers, it's worth more than your car. The elephant made a small noise behind her, something that sounded like a whimper. She had never known elephants could whimper. That sound shattered her. You're not taking it, Ellen said, almost surprised by her own voice. She didn't feel brave, just necessary. The man took a step forward, and the elephant shifted again, lowering its massive head beside hers. For a second, they looked like a wall, two beings broken by life, now standing against it. He scoffed. You gonna fight me for it, Grandma? The prod sparked in his hand. Ellen's heart pounded in her ears, but she didn't back down. She thought of her husband, of how he always stood up for those who couldn't. She thought of the silence her house had become. And now this loud, wounded life was asking her for something. The elephant took a step forward, gently pushing Ellen behind its leg with its trunk. It was protecting her. That moment snapped something loose inside her. Fear gave way to something fierce. She yelled, "Leave now or I'm calling the sheriff. I've got pictures. You're not touching this animal again." The man paused, eyeing the size of the elephant and Ellen's steel gaze. Then he cursed under his breath, spat into the dirt, and stormed back to his truck. The engine roared to life, tires spraying gravel as he peeled away. Ellen dropped to her knees, overwhelmed by everything, but mostly by the fact she hadn't run. She looked up at the elephant, still towering, still trembling. Its eyes met hers again. This time softer. It lowered its head until its trunk brushed her shoulder gently. She realized she was crying. "You're safe now," she whispered. "You're not going back." The first call Ellen made was to the local animal rescue, though her voice cracked through tears as she tried to explain the situation. "It's an elephant, chained, bleeding," she stammered. Silence followed on the other end until the woman said, "We'll send someone. Stay with her." Ellen sat beside the animal, wrapping the emergency blanket around her own shoulders, shivering despite the warmth. Within the hour, a small convoy arrived: veterinarians, a wildlife officer, and a retired zoo consultant. They approached slowly, eyes wide with disbelief. "Where did she even come from?" one whispered. Ellen didn't know. She only knew the elephant had chosen her for a reason. The team worked quickly, assessing the wounds, sedating the animal slightly to ease its pain. "She's malnourished, dehydrated, and severely abused," said Dr. Lena Patel, the lead vet. "This animal should be dead. But somehow, she's still standing." Ellen stood back, watching them tend to the creature. For the first time in years, she felt like she was part of something that mattered. She wasn't just witnessing suffering, she was helping to heal it. As they loaded the elephant onto a reinforced trailer, Ellen hesitated. "Can I come with her?" she asked. There was a pause, then a nod. "You're the reason she's still here," Dr. Patel said. During the ride to the sanctuary, Ellen sat up front, hands folded tight, heart full of questions. Behind her, the elephant rested, finally safe. At the sanctuary, a quiet, fenced-in field awaited. The elephant stepped out slowly, wobbling but determined. Ellen stood nearby, watching her breathe in the open space. No cages, no chains, just sky. The elephant let out a long, deep sound, half sigh, half trumpet. Everyone fell silent. "She's thanking you," the caretaker whispered. Ellen started visiting daily. She brought apples, read books aloud while sitting nearby, and hummed gospel songs her husband used to love. The elephant, now named Grace by the sanctuary staff, began to follow Ellen around the enclosure's edge, always keeping her in sight. Their bond deepened with every quiet afternoon. News of the rescue spread. Reporters came. A local news station ran a piece titled, "Widow and the Wounded Giant." Ellen didn't care about fame, only about Grace's healing. The man who tried to reclaim her was later arrested on charges of animal cruelty. He had been operating an illegal exotic animal trade out of an abandoned property just 40 miles away. One day, as Ellen approached the fence, Grace reached her trunk over and gently pulled Ellen's hand toward her heart. That touch, warm, deliberate, was unlike anything Ellen had felt since her husband died. "You found me too, didn't you?" she whispered. Tears fell, but this time they came with a smile. A month later, Grace took her first pain-free steps without sedatives. Ellen was there, cheering softly, her hand over her heart. The sanctuary team clapped. Even the vet who had feared the worst wept with joy. "She wasn't just rescued," Ellen said softly. "She came back to life." The head of the sanctuary approached Ellen that afternoon. "We're starting a new program," she said. "Animal therapy for seniors. Would you help us lead it with Grace?" Ellen looked at Grace, then back at the team. For the first time in a long time, she didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "We both still have something to give." Weeks turned into months, and Ellen's life took on a new rhythm, one filled with purpose. Every morning, she drove to the sanctuary, a thermos of tea in one hand and a canvas bag of fruit in the other. Grace would already be waiting by the fence, her massive form still, eyes soft, trunk reaching out in gentle greeting. They had become inseparable. Ellen began hosting weekly sessions at the sanctuary's shaded pavilion, where elderly visitors came to sit and watch Grace, some in wheelchairs, others walking with canes. She shared her story quietly, always ending with the same sentence: "Sometimes the one you save is the one who saves you." And every time Grace would lift her trunk, as if in agreement, children began to visit too, some brought by grandparents, others from nearby schools. Grace would patiently accept apples from small hands, and Ellen would explain how trauma leaves marks we can't always see, but kindness leaves deeper ones. Grace, who once flinched at every sound, now stood calmly as dozens watched in awe. The sanctuary grew, in part due to the attention Grace's story brought. Donations poured in. A new medical wing was built, named after Ellen's late husband, Thomas. "He always said animals feel more than we think," she told the ribbon-cutting crowd. That day, Grace placed her forehead gently against Ellen's back, and the entire crowd went silent with emotion. One quiet evening, Ellen stayed late. She sat in the tall grass just outside the enclosure, reading aloud from a tattered book of poetry. Grace stood close, listening, swaying slightly in the breeze. "We're both healing, aren't we?" Ellen murmured. The sun dipped low, casting a golden glow across the field, and the silence felt like peace. Her home, once filled with silence and grief, now had photos of sanctuary days, drawings from children, and small elephant figurines gifted by visitors. She kept Grace's first chain cut and rusted in a glass case on the mantel. "To remember where we came from," she said, "and how far we've walked since." Local newspapers now called her the Elephant Lady of Jasper County. But to Ellen, she was just someone who finally listened to an animal's pain, to her own stillness, and to what comes next. She began speaking at community centers, spreading awareness about wildlife abuse and the power of unexpected second chances. One afternoon, a woman approached her in tears after a talk. "I lost my husband last year," she said, "and I stopped living. But your story, your elephant, you gave me hope." Ellen hugged her tightly. "Then Grace has saved another," she whispered. The woman nodded, eyes shining. Grace wasn't just a rescued animal, she had become a living symbol of survival, of trust rebuilt, of finding connection in the unlikeless place. And Ellen, who once felt invisible, now stood beside her, proud, present, whole. She didn't just save an elephant, she remembered who she was.